They called me selfish. AITA for not telling my parents I was hospitalized for a week to prove a point. You need to hear this wild, mind-blowing story. ETA, I just woke up and started reading through all the comments. Sorry if I can't reply to everyone individually, but I noticed a lot of the same questions coming up, so I'll answer some of them here. Why didn't you just leave a text or voicemail? My parents basically do not text. They're terrible at it. Messages can sit unread for weeks. If they want to communicate, they call. Same with voice notes, we use WhatsApp. They rarely check them unless someone specifically tells them to. Why don't they install a landline? Because they don't want to. Simple as that. Our old landline was disconnected years ago and they never bothered getting another one installed. They're not even that old. Why can't they just learn how to use a phone? I think some people are misunderstanding what I mean when I say they're not tech savvy. For context, I live in Asia, and when my parents were younger, internet access and mobile phones were luxuries where we lived. In my hometown back then, only relatively wealthy people had mobile phones. My parents only got their first phones after my oldest brother moved away for college so they could stay in contact with him. And honestly, even back then they were hard to reach. So when I say they're not tech savvy, I don't mean old people can't understand technology. I mean they genuinely do not care enough to learn beyond the absolute basics. My dad once accidentally called our family WhatsApp group while he and my mom were gossiping about someone from church. Thankfully it was only our family group and not the church group itself. So yeah, that should paint a picture. Why do you expect them to be glued to their phones 24/7? I don't. When I say it takes multiple attempts to reach them, I don't mean I'm calling every 2 hours every day expecting immediate responses. I mean that whenever I do call, it often takes several tries before they answer, or they'll only notice hours later and call back then. They don't check notifications. They don't browse the internet. They don't watch YouTube or play games. They basically use their phones like old-fashioned cordless landlines whose only purpose is making calls. I've actually shown them how to use other features before, but they simply don't care enough to bother with any of it because, to them, phones are just for calling. I'm not asking them to become social media addicts. I'm asking them to at least keep their phones charged and maybe check them once or twice a day. Is it really that big of a problem? Yes. My brothers and I are not the only people who've complained about this. My parents have missed multiple important family updates because they don't answer calls or check messages. A cousin gave birth. They found out a week later. My mom's brother had surgery to remove kidney stones. She found out days afterward. And every single time, they get upset and complain that nobody tried hard enough to reach them. That's what makes this exhausting. A lot of commenters are saying they miss the old days before everyone was glued to their phones, and honestly, I get that. But we live in 2026 now. Important updates, emergencies, and family news are mostly communicated through calls and messages now whether we like it or not. Again, I am not demanding that my parents stay attached to their phones 24/7. I'm just asking for the bare minimum level of accessibility. Also, for those asking, my emergency contacts are my brothers and my parents. After this whole situation, I've honestly been considering asking my aunt if I can add her too. And lastly, someone claiming to be a medical worker said my story must be fake because nobody stays hospitalized for a week for food poisoning. First of all, people can absolutely end up hospitalized longer depending on dehydration, complications, pre-existing conditions, or other health issues. Second, even if there were other medical factors involved, that's not the point of the post and I don't owe random strangers my medical history. Pretty wild for a supposed medical worker to immediately dismiss someone else's health situation without knowing anything about them. I live in another city while my parents, both in their late 50s, still live in my hometown. We actually have a really good relationship overall. I usually fly home every Christmas, we talk often, and there's no major family drama. But there's one thing about them that has driven me and everyone else in our family insane for years. They are completely careless with their phones. They'll leave their phones in another room all day, leave them on silent by accident, or forget to charge them so the battery dies for an entire day. Sometimes I'll call 5 or 6 times before someone finally answers hours later. I've talked to them about it many times because they don't have a landline, so their cell phones are literally the only reliable way to reach them. Yes, I understand they come from an older generation and aren't exactly tech-savvy. They didn't grow up attached to phones the way younger people did. But they're not that old, and I still feel like if your cell phone is your only form of communication, you should at least keep it charged and within hearing distance. I've told them things like, what if there's an emergency, or what if someone urgently needs to contact you? They always brush it off and act like I'm overreacting. Last month, I got severe food poisoning and ended up hospitalized for a week. It wasn't life-threatening, but I was pretty miserable. While I was in the hospital, I tried calling both of them multiple times over 2 days. No answer. One phone was D*ad, the other apparently was left somewhere in the house. At that point I got frustrated and honestly just gave up trying. Now, to be fair, I could have contacted my aunt, who lives near them, and she absolutely would have told them. But after years of this same issue, I decided not to. Part of me thought, maybe this is the only way they'll finally understand why people keep their phones accessible. Yesterday I was talking to my mom on the phone and casually mentioned, "Oh yeah, last month I was hospitalized for food poisoning for about a week." She completely freaked out and got really angry that I never told them. I explained that I did try to contact them repeatedly, but they didn't answer. She said I still should have called my aunt because this was an emergency. I admitted that I could have done that, but I intentionally didn't because I wanted them to finally realize how irresponsible they are with their phones. That made her even angrier. She said I used my hospitalization to prove a point and scared them unnecessarily. My dad thinks we're both being stubborn. I honestly didn't think it was that huge of a deal since I recovered fine and it wasn't life-threatening, but now I'm wondering if I took the lesson too far. AITA. Submitted by /u/shot, Jello, 4878, link, comments.